7:10, Paige Duncan and Lorraine Brew, Economic Development Committee, Summer Intern. 7:15, public hearing, Kraft Soccer LLC. 7:30, public hearing, Shash Inc., DBA Jack's Corner Store. Keshav Krupa LLC, DBA Quickstop Beer and Wine. 7:45, Bill Keegan, Sean McCarthy, CIP, Language Revisions. 7:55, Chief Bill Baker, Hesh Kagan, Jess Enos, Proposed International Law Enforcement Exchange Program. 8:05, Neponset Reservoir River Commission, Richard Lewis. 8:35, Selectmen's Update. 8:45, Town Manager's Update. We have a bunch of action items. About 9:05, we'll go into executive session to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations for contract renewal with non-union personnel, Finance Director Randy Scollins, and also to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for contract negotiation amendment with non-union personnel, Police Chief William Baker. Chris, will you lead us in the pledge?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, a little after 7. Anybody here for citizen input? AJ, Tina?
Hello.
Welcome.
I'm a little sick, so I'm going to let AJ do most of the talking, but I'm Tina Ballinger. I'm going to let AJ do it to talk to you about Clean Up Foxborough Day. I'm going to let AJ take over the talking. This is bad.
Thank you for having us tonight. Yeah, so we would like to bring a date to you guys in regards to the 6th annual Clean Up Foxborough Day. The day that we are looking at is April 28th, Saturday, April 28th. And we've spoken to other groups in the areas and made sure that there was not as much conflict. There's always going to be a little bit of conflict, but we kind of researched it a little bit, and that looked like it was the best date for everybody. So we would like to bring that to you guys.
It's close in time to Earth Day. Earth Day is April 22nd, so it makes sense to do
No
it.
SATs, stuff like that. There's been conflicts in the past that have kind of kept the numbers down, not as good as we would have liked, so we think that April 28th is the best day.
Is that later than it normally is?
No, it's actually the same weekend we've had it the last, this will be the 3rd year in a row we've had it on the end of April. So.
Joe Garrity said the date worked, so we're going
We're
to
good then. Do you need anything from us? We don't have to vote or anything. It's a notification.
Yeah, we're just letting you guys know that that's the date that we're hoping for. With your blessing, we'll run with it, and we'll have a great showing again and make the town look great again.
AJ, what's the numbers of bags of trash that we picked up in the past?
I don't want to misquote. I'm not really sure.
Yeah.
Tina might be able to say
Yeah,
something.
I brought notes from
It's some
last-
ridiculous number.
Yeah, mine's okay.
1,400 bags, 5.5 tons of trash. So yeah, there's a lot out there to be picked up. Like last week with that wind blowing and stuff, there were some recycle bins that were tipped over and blowing everywhere. So it's good timing. We need it.
It's always
How
a
many
great-
volunteers numbers over the 6 years are they?
They've been
steady?
great. I mean, they went up, and now they've kind of leveled off. I'm hoping that this is the biggest and the best year.
I've actually already had people contact me to say, hey, when is it happening? And I've had a
People
couple
ask a
people-
lot.
Yeah, so people want to know.
Yeah, it's a great day.
It really is. So the
Saturday,
other thing, we did
April-
want to ask you if we could appoint Joey Garrity to be our student representative on the Clean Up Foxborough Day Committee and help be sort of an ambassador liaison to at the high school and out in the community.
But he's so shy. Yeah, that's good. I don't
You
see
can vote on that. I know you
Not
can't
gonna
vote on
get
it
it-
here.
not gonna
but,
get pushed
Whether they
back
say
here.
no, he's gonna be it anyway, so,
I thought he was the de facto.
yeah,
No, that's great.
That's awesome.
And it's Saturday, April 28th?
Saturday, April 28th, and we do it timing-wise. What time do we usually do it?
8 a.m.
It's usually 8 a.m.
8 a.m.
Starts,
to 12. The cookout's usually at 12 or a
Yeah.
little bit before.
that's right.
Haven't really reached out to everyone, but as far as in regards to, people supplying stuff and whatnot, but it's usually always the regulars, the same people who step up, and so looking to do the same stuff as we usually do, have the cookout at right around noontime, maybe 11:30 noontime, and
Now that we have a date that we presented to you, we can reach out to Snyder Electric and see if, hopefully, they've been very generous with the use of their grove.
Yeah.
And it's been a great location for us, so
Okay.
hopefully that date will work for them, so.
Will you, do you mind coming back like 2 weeks prior?
2 weeks prior to the event?
Prior to the event, and just give us an update, just so
Sure.
we can announce it again, and then if you guys are in need of anything, we can
Sounds
get that
good.
out to the public as well.
can do that, no problem.
No problem at all, just let us know which date that is.
The 17th would be the next time the board will meet.
Okay. All right,
Before
excellent.
that, before that date.
The 17th of April?
Yes.
Excellent.
So we're good to go in as far as the date?
Yep.
Awesome.
Great, thanks a lot.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you very much.
And you're going to put Joey on the committee for us?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean,
Excellent.
I don't think we have the authority to appoint your committee, do we?
Yeah, actually, we are an official selectman appointed.
Yeah.
But Joe Garrity,
So, being this is citizens' input, we can't take a vote now, but we'll get them on there,
Yeah,
okay?
thank you so much. Super.
Thank you.
Okay.
Good night.
Excellent. Thanks so much. Thank you, Keith.
Yeah, yeah. Anybody else here for citizens input? You come right up to the table. That's better.
How is the town addressing our electrical problem that we've had for years?
Can you state your name for the record?
George Ellison, South High Street.
Bill, you want to take this one?
Sure. I'm not sure that I understand what specific problem you're having, sir, but obviously, everybody experienced significant problems during this past storm because we had a lot of tree damage. And in fact, areas that normally don't go down, for instance, Mansfield has not gone down in years. They actually had a microburst that occurred actually in West Mansfield during that storm that caused significant damage and actually caused their town to be down for 2 days. Our town is actually 100% back up as of today, as of tonight. So the response time, the majority of the town, I'd say close to 90% of the town was up within 48 hours.
How many hours? sir?
About 48 hours of the storm. And, which I think is pretty remarkable considering the amount of damage that actually was sustained throughout the community. Foxborough is one of those communities where there are a lot of trees. Even though they do a lot of trimming throughout the year, we actually have a very good tree crew, and as well as Ingrid actually does a lot of trimming throughout the year. The problem we had was this, we had 70 to 80 mile an hour winds during this storm, which caused a lot of trees to break and snap off, and actually had, and then fall on poles throughout the community. And actually, in some areas, we actually lost some major trunk lines coming into town, which supplied power to about 3,000 to 4,000 homes. Once that came back up, which, by the way, the damage on that, there was like 5 poles that broke on East Belcher Road that caused that to occur. There has been a lot of upgrades to the system, and there is actually more expected over the next 3 years. It's been a 10-year process of updating the system to improve the Union Loop, which is a major supplier to this entire area. So the system that you see right now has actually been improved quite significantly. Problem we still incur is that it's weather-related, and this was a case where the storm caused significant amount of damage based on the amount of wind that we had during the storm. So I can tell you that they have been the response was actually quite remarkable in many ways.
So you look at the other towns that have their own municipal police,
Mhm.
Norwood,
Mhm.
Taunton,
Mhm.
South North Attleboro.
Yep.
The lights flickered, and that was it.
Actually, no, Taunton was out quite significantly, sir.
Still is.
And it still is, because I know Chris actually has his office there. And in fact, North Attleboro, I think, probably had the least amount of problems of anyone, but Mansfield had a significant amount of problems. They have their own light service as well. In fact, this system is actually
So
one of
you're
the
only
nice.
out 4 hours.
Yeah, they were out for 2 days. We actually have, one of our secretaries works there and said she was out for 2 days. So we had,
Norwood I don't think had as much damage because Norwood's actually built out a little bit more, doesn't have as many trees along the road, so I think they didn't have as much damage to their system as other areas. But the South Shore had significant damage, the Cape Cod is still fixing their system. And we're worried about tomorrow, because now we have another storm that's gonna cause 40 to 50 mile an hour winds in some cases.
Has the town ever thought about going independent for electrical company? In other words, doing it themselves?
Having our own system, sir?
Yes.
That's not been a question since I've been here, nor is, I don't know if it's ever been posed in
The
the
last
past. but-
last storm they did. Am I right, sir, James?
Yeah, we talked about that at the
Yeah.
state
Yes.
level. And with
And
that-
where
State
where
level,
did
yeah.
that go?
I think the conclusion was, it was a good idea back in the 70s and the 60s when it was
Yeah.
manageable from a permitting, but
Right.
to find the land, acquire the land, permit it, and do the expense for a storm that comes every so many years, I don't think the town had the appetite to go forward with that. Millions and millions and millions of dollars.
It's a huge investment. Huge
I've been in
investment.
the town 52 years, and it's a disaster. The electrical thing is a disaster.
I know when, just before our town manager came on, when the big storm came out, when we were gone for a while, we had pretty heated debates with National Grid when they came in.
I was up to high school,
Yep,
yeah.
and at that time, we have the ground to sky clearing around the wires. And I've said it then, and I'll say it now, back, and it wasn't too long ago, they did a horrendous job with the clearing, and even worse with the communication. So when you'd call up, you'd get an 800 number, and there was no information. I mean, since then, through the work with our town manager, the town, cable access, the patch, all that stuff, the information is released out there. We have liaisons with National Grid, so you can get real people. Coordination with the shelters. So, I mean, I was out for 2 days. And believe me, I'm not arguing with it, because I understand your frustration. It's head and shoulders over it was probably 7 years ago.
I had water in the cellar. My pump couldn't come on, 'cause I didn't have electricity.
Yeah, I think over time, we got a generator, people get, because they understand it's probably gonna happen next year, it's a way of life here. If we could manage a way to get our own electric plant, I think people would jump on that, but once they found out the cost and the years to do it,
It would take several years to do that. It would take several years. I've actually come from a couple communities that actually had their own power companies, but they were designed back in the 50s and 60s and put together back then. So there aren't many new communities coming on with new light plants these days, sir, and it's because it's a significant expense, and the permitting process, as the selectman points out, is correct. That process takes several years before you would actually see that action, before you even get started on the process.
Bottom line too is, no matter who's doing the power, if you have a 80-foot pine tree uprooted out of the ground and knocks a telephone pole.
Oh, I understand
down,
the storm,
I mean,
this,
This storm driving around, that was the majority of the issues, where
That's what it was, yeah.
major trees just totally uprooted and wiping out.
but the one that James and I went to at the town hall, where they blasted the chairman, I believe she was.
yeah. The one that was in vacation.
And what
in
happened,
Hawaii.
and what happened, the lights went out there when she was talking.
Well, there was a
Am I
power
right?
outage during the National Grid.
We've come a long way since then, though, with
Yeah.
National Grid. They were very responsive.
They were very responsive in this case. We actually, they actually had a person right in our public safety operation, and then during our operational meetings, they would actually sit during the meetings, and they give us minute-by-minute updates on what was going on. In fact, right up until just before the meeting tonight, they notified us that the last repair was done, and so we're actually 100% up right now.
So, in the future, what are we looking at with them?
Well, I will tell you that the biggest concern right now that most of my colleagues around the state are worried about is actually the severity of the storms that are seemingly increasing over the times that we've seen them. I've been doing this a long time, and I can tell you, the storms I've seen recently are some of the most severe ones I've seen. I think that's a figment of the or a factor of the weather and Mother Nature, unfortunately. But the best we can do is to put systems in place, and if you had clear cutting all the way through on all the lines, that might assist. But a lot of communities don't want that. Quite honestly, that's a significant effort to do that.
A lot of
And
who
a lot of
doesn't
community-
want it?
a lot of communities don't want to see that happen.
Oh,
Because people like the trees, and they don't want the trees entirely cut down along the lines, until
them what-
actually they fall in a line, then it's a different attitude, but,
Don't look, move to Foxborough to find out.
right.
So, are they gonna do more trimming on the trees?
They do that every year, sir. They actually have crews in this town just about on an annual basis now, and they work with our tree crews, and we cut on the sides away from the lines, they cut on the areas where the lines are located.
All right, in front of my house, 2 weeks ago, they came in and they only cut on the top half. They didn't cut the bottom half.
Yeah. A lot of times they'll do that, because usually the electrical companies, they're the top lines on,
Yeah.
on the system.
Yeah.
So they cut away from those electrical lines, because if everything else goes, that's usually okay, because you can survive without the you can survive without the cable and
Right.
maybe the alarm systems, but
Right.
they try and keep the trees away from the electrical lines, which is the top layer of the systems.
So it's a 10-year project that,
Well, we're actually into the 7th year of that right now, so we've got about 3 more years before that's done. But all those crews you've been seeing along 106 and along 140, different areas throughout town, they've been actually doing that work on a regular basis. It's a very significant upgrade to the system.
okay. Thank you, gentlemen and ladies.
Thank you, sir.
Well, after 7:05, Carl Fuller, Permanent Municipal and School Building Committee. We have a,
Carl was supposed to be here,
yeah,
so he maybe tied up in some. Carl is actually the deputy director of the municipal,
Right.
of the facilities department. Bill Euclid said he was gonna join us for that, so he's been tied up in a thing, on something else, he was gonna be here
all
early.
right, so we'll move on.
Might wanna come
Okay.
back to that.
Okay. 7:10, Paige Duncan, Lorraine Brew. Economic Development Committee Summer Intern.
Good evening. Thank you, here representing the Economic Development Committee. We also have with us in the audience Bob Hickey and Cindy Haddad-Drew from our Downtown Business Association. We're here tonight to talk about requesting funding for a summer intern position. The funds are available. The cost is estimated to be approximately $5,600. And Paige will give you more details on exactly what the assignments for that intern would be, but they certainly are numerous. The committee's very fortunate to have the efforts of Paige and her ability to keep us focused on all the many projects that are coming, that we are working on, and we really appreciate her efforts, but recognize that she cannot do all of this by herself, and feel that this is a very important position that would help her and the committee a lot this summer.
Thank you. Good evening. So, yeah, we, just to tell you how exciting it is, what happened was we got a grant from MAPC last spring, and it was to basically try, the terms they used were to try to set a precondition for a downtown business association. So there were some visioning meetings and discussions, and it was really focused on the businesses. As a result of that, a core group of a few businesses have started to coalesce, and that's as evidenced by the core group of people that do a lot of things here in town, Cindy and Bob. But there are many others. The Barrows have been involved, and we've had up to 15 people at our meetings. The group meets the first Wednesday of the month at the Orpheum. It starts at 7 a.m., so it's a morning meeting. But I think what's really been exciting is the group is starting to get some traction, and they did a mailing. How many did you do, Cindy? It was like 300 plus businesses? They mailed out to 300-plus businesses last month, and we've been getting the mail back, and they've been collecting checks to start creating this entity of downtown business, and they're starting to think about the next steps, like a newsletter, and really starting to get the group moving. So one of the ideas was this intern. I did include a letter in your package, hopefully you got it, but basically, this intern could assist with downtown business association activities, things like outreach, grant writing, inventory. One of the key things we're working on I think it was the police chief, asked for an inventory of all the businesses in town. So we had last year's summer intern for, I think it was Mary Beth's intern, did a business inventory. We use that inventory for the mailing, and now we're learning what business addresses are good and what are bad, and it would be great to have a database for our town. So that might be a fringe benefit of this effort, is actually having a real list, because we actually did get a lot of return mail, and we've been updating it as it comes in. The other thing that's called for in the master plan that I think is an untapped resource at this point is bicycle connection to downtown. You know, we have the state forest, and we're starting to look into complete streets, and it would be great to start creating some sort of connection and letting bikers know what's in downtown. We're expecting more businesses to want to come in as more people and there's more activity downtown. So that's another effort they would work on. From a town perspective, not just downtown, an inventory of commercial land would be a great help. We get a lot of emails from the state saying, oh, we have a company looking for, you know, a 200,000 square foot warehouse with 4 loading docks, and, you know, looking for certain information, and we don't have that list readily available. And that would be a great resource. In keeping with that, then if you have that information, a lot of times EDCs will have their own website where you can actually have someone interested in moving, a business moving to town, they'll come onto the website, they'll see what's available, they'll see the permitting process, they'll see that the EDC is welcoming, they'll understand our growth nodes. So that's another benefit that could come of this. Obviously, the chances are I won't get all of these things done in the summer, but I will try to get this person to do it. Downtown parking plan, we're getting ready to look at the parking area behind all the businesses on Central Street. Roger Hill's going to come out. Actually, he's going tomorrow morning to the meeting with the downtown business, and he's going to talk to them about the next steps of what need to be done and just take a look at that. We'd love to do a sign inventory and create sort of a cohesive sign plan. You know, I know when the state came and did the road work, they put up, I think, 1 million street signs. We've actually had Ryan out there do an inventory. We have them all located, we know, but it's just gonna take an effort to start looking at what needs to be there, what doesn't, and should we start creating a brand for the downtown where you can have parking signs and, you know, tie in some of the destinations. And then another neat idea would be having a rail trail option going between Patriot Place and downtown. We'd love to get like a bike path or something, and I know someone started to look into it, and I said, honestly, I just can't take that on as my own project right now, because I have a couple others, but it would be so cool if someone could start to look into that and see if there's anything, and then if we could get some folks interested, we could maybe get a committee going and start pushing for that. So those are the few of the items that we'd love to have an intern help out on. It's a great opportunity to train. Our last intern has gone on to successfully work for the Town of Medway Planning Department, so she's now gainfully employed. I see her at planning meetings. So it's a great opportunity to sort of give back, but, you know, Mackenzie brought a lot of value to us as well, so it's a two-way street. So we do have a couple of the members of the downtown business. It's actually called the Foxborough Common Business Collaborative. We're working on things like logo and outreach and whatnot. So any businesses that are interested in getting involved should get in touch with. They can always call the planning office, and I'll get them in touch with the downtown business group.
Great. Questions from the board?
So the reimbursement for the intern would be out of the grant money that you guys received?
No, actually, this would be the EDC had a chunk of money at one point, I believe. Randy told me it came from liquor licenses up at Patriot Place, and it had to be earmarked for economic development. So this money is part of that sum of money that we've used it for the market study, the land survey, and now we'd like to do it for an intern. So it is a pool of money was there, and apparently if that license, those certain licenses, I think there's 12 maybe, if they transfer, more money goes back into that fund. So we're not sure when that, or if that will ever happen, but for right now, when we were looking at funding this, Randy said that he suggests we use the money earmarked for economic development.
Yep.
Made good sense to us.
Just want to advise the board too, there's another license that's going to be forthcoming fairly soon that will actually help send additional money into that fund.
Oh, yeah? Oh.
So,
So what we have to do is just give you permission to use that money that's needed.
yes.
That's what
Yes,
we're-
because the EDC is a subcommittee
before
of
the
your
board.
group, so they really don't have any voting authority on that.
So is there any liquor license, the fee goes into economic
Any new
development?
liquor licenses or reuse license, depending, it's the way our licensing is set up now, that new licenses before the board is a $5,000 initial fee. that goes into the Economic Development Fund. It was tied initially to the additional licenses that came through the legislature, and that was considered part of the legislation when we initially did it.
So it's not necessarily Patriot Place license?
No, it comes, actually, it was tied to the ones for the downtown as well, and other ones.
Very well presented. Question, where did the $14 an hour come from? Is that
That's,
your experience?
see, Jim, I am ready for you.
I'm not saying good or bad.
No, I'm just excited you asked the question, I had an answer. From the, it's the pay plan, whatever the town's pay
Right.
plan is.
Yeah.
So,
There's no, it's full-time for 10 weeks, but not benefited.
No.
correct. And chances are, no
Seasonal
intern's
position.
really gonna work 40 hours a week. I mean, I'm budgeting for that. Chances are it won't even use the full amount, because I'm sure they'll take a week off here or work, 20 hours one week if I let them. But no, yeah, I did do a max at 40 hours. I wish an intern would work 40 hours, but I doubt it.
One last question, and I don't know if it's an avenue you can go, but I know a lot of the colleges, my kids are on it to doing interns, but they're not paid because they're teaching. Did you look at reaching out to colleges for unpaid internships?
I didn't. I mean, we worked with obviously Northeastern through the Capstone program and whatnot. A lot of times when they're in school, it has to be very much tied to their curriculum. But I haven't really taken that effort to try to deal with the professors and their timing and their schedules.
A lot of them will be undergraduates, if you're unpaid, but a lot of times, we get graduate students.
Yeah,
for
sometimes it's
the
graduate,
paid
yeah.
ones. And they're better anyways, because they have a lot of the credentials already, initial credentials.
Right, because I'm already thinking of how I want to write this job advertisement. I mean, I want, someone who looks good on paper, but they need to be a people person. We really want someone who can be out talking to the businesses and, like, I'm pretty busy, Cindy's pretty busy, we're all busy, so we need someone who can do a good job on their own, but get a lot done. So it's going to take a certain person, not just someone who's got book smarts. It's going to have certain charisma as well.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other questions from the board? Have a motion?
Yep. Move to approve funds for an Economic Development Committee summer intern.
Second.
Motion made, second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all's in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank
And if
you.
I may say one last thing, there's a legislative breakfast Friday morning at the Gillette Stadium, and it's being hosted by the MAPC, and I'm the chair of the sub-region. And so Jay Barrows and I are hosting this legislative breakfast, so feel free, it's at 8 a.m. at the stadium. Let me know if you want a flyer, but anybody's welcome, and we'll hear also, we have about 6 or 7 legislators coming right now, and they say that oftentimes they'll show up last minute without confirming, so we're hoping for a productive discussion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great, thanks. Okay, this is 7:15, public hearing, Kraft Soccer LLC.
The Board of Selectmen, acting as the local licensing authority pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 140, Section 181, and Section 183A, and Chapter 136, Section 4, Town of Foxborough General Bylaws, Chapter 229, and also Stadium Rules and Regulations, will conduct a public hearing on Tuesday, March 6, 2018, beginning at 7:15 p.m. in the Gala Meeting Room, 40 South Street, to review the application submitted by Kraft Soccer LLC for the 2018 New England Revolution home games, including potential home playoff games, as well as international matches and doubleheaders that include the Revolution. All events are proposed for Gillette Stadium. Application for these events is on file at the Office of Selectmen. All interested parties are welcome to attend.
Welcome.
Randy Briggs with the Stadium Advisory Committee.
Hello, my name is Joe Shamas. I'm the Director of Business Operations and Customer Service for the New England Revolution. Here on behalf of Jess Enos, I'm sure you know her. Unfortunately, she can't join us tonight because she is off to travel. She'll be at the beach. We'll be here shoveling snow, but fair trade-off. So she wanted me to just give you a brief background about myself. First, to let you know that I'm entering my 7th season with the Revolution. Before that, I worked 5 seasons with the Boston Red Sox. And, she mentioned as well some of the different operations that I can run through regarding the 2018 season. So as you know, we have a 17-game home schedule along with potential postseason games. We're very excited this year, kind of a new beginning with our new head coach, Brad Friedel. And, we are looking forward to our home opener coming up this Saturday at 1:30. The majority of the games are on Saturdays. There's one Wednesday game, one Friday game, and then one Sunday game. The early games have an earlier kickoff time at 1:30, and then the majority of the other games are 7:30 kickoff. It's a very similar format to past seasons with regards to MLS scheduling. The season runs from March all the way through October. So there isn't anything that has changed with regards to the timing. And game day operations as well will be very similar to past years. So the general parking lots will open 2 hours before kickoff, and the gates will open 1 hour before kickoff, which is exactly the way it was set up as last year. The usual setup as well, for the parking flow, the majority of the cars will first come in to the stadium side of the parking lot, and then depending on sales and other on-site events, parking department, with conversations with public safety, would open up the other side of Route 1 for that traffic flow, depending on the game. There's also a fan zone, which is in Lot 4A at Patriot Place, which will also be open for every game, starting when the parking lot's open, in that same format as previous seasons.
Questions from the board?
Pretty straightforward, everything looks like it's in order.
There's questions come up in the past, but all the paperwork is in order.
And Stadium Advisory Committee,
Yep, since there weren't any changes from the previous year, and it was a unanimous vote to recommend approval of the application, which we submitted in writing. Yes.
being this is a public hearing, anybody in the audience have any questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none.
Move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion made, second, any further discussion? Seeing none, all's in favor?
Aye. Move to approve the Kraft Soccer LLC application for the 2018 New England Revolution home games, including potential home playoff games, as well as international matches and doubleheaders that include the Revolution.
Second.
Motion made, second, any further discussion? Seeing none, all's in favor? Aye. Good luck.
Thank you very much.
So luck.
Appreciate it.
Good luck this weekend.
Okay. 7:35, 7:30, public hearing, Shash Inc., DBA Jack's Corner Store, Keshav Krupa, LLC, DBA Quickstop Beer and Wine.
I'm trying to pull it up. I don't have the wording.
It's the second page of it.
There we go.
Have it. Thank you. The Board of Selectmen of the Town of Foxborough, acting as the local licensing authority pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 138, will conduct a public hearing on Tuesday, March 6, 2018, at 7:30 PM in the Gala Meeting Room, 40 South Street, Foxborough, Mass., on an application and pledge of license and transfer of license for an annual wine and malt package store license for Shash Inc., doing business as J.A.K. Corner Store, 79 Summer Street, Foxborough, Mass. 02035. Manager, Gadapali, to Keshav Krupa, LLC, DBA Quickstop Beer and Wine. Manager, MLG Patel. All interested persons are invited to attend.
Welcome.
Thank you, Board. My name is Matthew Porter, the attorney for the applicant Keshav Krupa LLC. With me is Jayesh Patel, 50% owner of the corporation. This is a very straightforward transfer of a license. Both Jayesh as well as Hemel Patel, who's also going to be managing the location, have several years of experience in the liquor industry. Both of them are alcohol tip certified. I can certainly supply those if the board would like to see them. There's no anticipated major changes to the store, no structural changes. It's been a smooth transaction thus far. We have all of our financing in order. Everything's been smooth with the seller. We certainly don't anticipate any issues with the ABCC. Neither of these individuals have had any issues with any of their previous licenses. So, with that, I can certainly answer any questions that you may have, as well as Jayesh can as well.
Questions from the board?
No.
It's a pretty straightforward sale and transfer.
It is, and the only, I guess, wrinkle would just be the DBA name change, but other than that, it's very straightforward.
You familiar with Fox Cares?
Fox Cares? No.
Fox Cares? No. Okay. I'm going to pass your name along to the group, Fox Cares. It's a group of license holders within the community that that are very diligent in responsible liquor sales and service. It's a group, and what they do is they do a lot of self-evaluation. They share best practices. They sponsor group tip certification. It's a good resource, especially for new members, new license holders.
Sure.
It can kind of walk you through the process and, you know, what we expect. Yeah, granted, it's in our regulations.
Okay.
But it's good to talk to people that have, you know, been responsible license holders for a period of time.
Yep.
So,
Okay, that's good.
being it is a public hearing, anybody in the audience has any questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none.
I'll move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion made, seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none. All's in favor?
Aye. Move to approve pledge and transfer of off-premise annual wines and malt license from Shash Inc., DBA JAK Corner Store, to Keshav Krupa LLC, DBA Quickstop Beer and Wine.
Second.
Motion made, seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none. All's in favor? Aye.
Thank you very much for your time.
Bill, you want to jump ahead?
Sure.
Sean's here, so we can do that.
Yeah, if you will, if, we can do this now, if you want to jump to the chief's action, that's up to you. So Hesh and the chief don't have to wait
Yeah,
now.
we'll do the chief.
Because this might take a few minutes, Sean, if you don't mind.
We'll jump ahead to the 7:55. Police Chief Bill Baker, Hesh Kagan, proposed international law enforcement exchange program.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
Yeah, I'm Hesh Kagan, president of the Rotary Club. And as you know, international peace through understanding is a central theme to the Rotary Club. We're happy to support Chief Baker in his in a concept that he brought us about a year ago for sending 2 officers to some other part of the world and receiving 2 officers in exchange as part of a cultural exchange program. To that end, the club has voted to support that financially. We gave the first installment of that to you folks a few weeks ago. We're prepared to contribute the rest of a $3,000 grant to that effort, and we continue to look for additional funding to support the program. We're quite excited about it and think it'll be a great program.
Great. Questions from the board?
So the Rotary's going to fund the entire, what was it?
We're prepared to fund the entire cost, yeah.
Okay.
If we can get other support from the community, we'll happily accept it, and we're actively trying to secure that.
Perhaps the chief could just give the board, you know, a bit of a briefing about what the program does and how it works, and I think that would be helpful for their understanding.
Sure. Hopefully, you've had a chance to look at the document that I prepared last August describing the program. But it's a program that I've done in other places, and it's grounded basically in the fact that I had the good fortune to live and work in 40 countries around the world, mentoring the national police chiefs in those countries. And when I came back to the United States, I had the good fortune of sending officers from departments that I led to foreign countries to experience the nuances of living and working in foreign countries and cultures. And what we found in all of those places is the officers came back from, for example, watching a Russian police officer standing on a traffic post for 15 hours a day with no break for $50 a month, all of a sudden feeling pretty good about their situation where they worked here in the United States. And so this program will be modeled after those programs that I had created previously. The officers will be going to the country of Haiti, a place that I lived and worked. Interestingly, the woman at the U.S. Embassy in Haiti who's going to facilitate their visit, unbeknownst to me, I had a relationship with the ambassador and the deputy ambassador, but the woman who's going to facilitate this visit is actually a graduate of Foxborough High School, which falls into the small world category. So she's excited to receive 2 of our officers who will be traveling there on March 25th. They'll spend 4 days in country visiting with the National Police, learning a little bit about how the National Police function. They're also going to be doing some community service while they're there. And that community service will be in cooperation with a company called Peace Cycle, which was started by an American woman that went there to adopt a child and learned that the Haitian society was putting a lot of children into adoption because the parents couldn't afford to feed them and clothe them and provide medical care for them. And so she thought, rather than take one of the children out of this country, I'm going to create a program that allows women to work and earn money and be able to keep their children at home. And so it's a pretty extraordinary program where people take the plastic bags that they drink water out of, which are like our plastic bottles, and they recycle those bags and turn them into actual shopping bags and usable products. And the money that they earn from producing those bags helps them keep their children rather than having to give them up for adoption. So our officers will be spending some time in the villages with the parents of those children and helping them collect the bags to be recycled. So I think it'll be a great professional experience, a great cultural experience, and my overall goal is that I think these kinds of programs increase and expand our officers' cultural competence and improve the way they interact with people from other countries and cultures who we're beginning to deal with much more often here than maybe was true in the past. So we're grateful to the Rotary for the support, be grateful for the support of the board and the town manager as well, and would ask you to accept the donation on behalf of this program.
So the 2 officers are going to be chosen by lottery?
Yes.
Has that happened yet?
It has. Looking for names? Officer Stephen McGrath and Detective Patrick Hoffman are the 2 officers. So they've been briefed extensively about what to expect and how to prepare for the trip. And I went down for about a 36-hour, 48-hour trip and met with the ambassador and the National Police Chief, Michael Gedeon, and the 2 police liaisons from the embassy, and have and set up all the content of their trip so that they're ready to go, and will depart on the 25th of this month.
And on the flip side, when the Haitians come here, we'll have, in addition to the training that's been set up for them that you could better describe, we'll have an evening for the community for some kind of dialogue and interaction where folks in the community can have a good opportunity to meet them and discuss what things are like in Haiti.
Yeah,
so they'll come back.
Outstanding.
I'm sorry.
That's outstanding.
And so they'll come back with some specific interest that will accommodate. One of the interests happens to be the forensic interview of children victims of sexual assault. And as you know, we have a premier resource in that regard right behind the public safety building that we work with in our child sexual assault cases. So we'll have a great visit set up for them, and we'll have a cultural component here as well. And part of that cultural component will be that our charter school, for example, is 65% Haitian, which is interesting. So there'll be an opportunity to interact with the board. We hope to bring them before the board and bring them to the Rotary and introduce them around the community, put them out on patrol with some of our officers and have them work with our detectives on some cases. So we're looking forward to bringing them back probably in the June timeframe.
You don't want to bring them back when it's going to snow?
Furley one's a little warmer
That
than-
would be mean. Sounds like a great program.
Thank you.
So,
What are some of the other funding sources that you're looking at besides just the Rotary?
Other sources? Well, we've approached Schneider, we've approached the Kraft organization, and we've approached other service organizations in town.
They would just be donating to the Rotary to help supplement this.
That would be the goal.
What about any public donations?
We haven't gone to the public directly.
Just want to point out for the.
We're also looking at a Rotary grant opportunity through the hierarchical Rotary organization.
Particularly what's an international matter. Yeah, that's great.
And this is a program that might be replicated through other Rotary clubs, so there's a lot of eyes on it.
I should point out on behalf of the Rotary too, this is actually the second program that they've supported for us. They were the principal supporters of the cop card program, which has allowed us to have the officers out there with those baseball-style cards to give to the kids. I think we're on our 6th reorder for Officer Azevedo at the high school and middle school. He's turned out to be too popular, unfortunately, but we're very pleased with the way that program has gone as well.
We'll have to put out a rookie card.
That's Kelly Colvin, actually, one of our new officers. On the back of the card, they had a little biographical information and a positive saying, and that's what Kelly put on the back of his. He put rookie card, so it's highly sought after.
Is this the first international program, police program that the Rotary has supported?
With the police?
Right.
Yeah, we support lots and lots of international programs, but this is the first one we've done in concert with the police department.
And there's no other Rotary club in the country doing anything similar to this?
We haven't found anything quite like this anywhere else. Of course, our budget is about a third international and a third domestic and a third local, but this is a unique program for us.
That's good.
So there's no action to take right now.
Well,
is there?
the action for you tonight is to accept the grant from the.
That's in the
as a
action
gift.
items, right?
It's actually, I thought it was part of this motion. I apologize if that's the case. You can take care of it as part of the action item tonight.
We have $3,000 to give towards this program right now. $700 was given already as to cover the initial investigation for this in Haiti, and we have the balance, approximately $2,300, that will provide through the appropriate mechanism.
Yeah, I stand corrected, Mr. Chairman. It's just a discussion. It's actually an action item in your
Yeah.
other
Okay.
area.
Do you want to vote on the action item now?
Yeah, why don't we take that action item?
So the action item only has the $715 that's been spent to date.
Correct.
We just approve that one for now and wait on the rest?
Correct.
Okay. Move to accept a gift donation in the amount of $715.71 to the police department from the Foxborough Rotary Club to be used for the International Police Exchange Program.
Second.
Motion made, second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all's in favor?
Right.
Thank you very much.
Great.
Good luck.
Yeah, thanks.
Great job, guys.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Ash.
Good to see you, Hesh. It's up to you, if you want to stay. You can stay for a few minutes. Yeah, you can if you want. It's up to you. It's up to you. I think it'll be fine. Mr. Chairman, just a question. We have an item later on tonight. Do you want the chief to stay for that, or does anybody have any further questions about that?
I read through it. I'm okay. I'd leave it up to the board.
I mean, it's up to you. I don't
Yeah.
want, I'm not trying to put anybody on the spot. If you have further questions, the chief is here. Otherwise, I'll send him on his way.
Which item is
That
that?
was the
executive
executive
session.
session.
Oh, yeah, I read that, and I actually got the same correspondence back as well.
Yeah, so-
From the organization.
And you're good?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay, great. Thank you.
Good night.
Excellent.
Thanks, chief.
All right, thank you.
Okay. 7:45, Bill. Sean McCarthy, CIP,
Come on, Sean,
language
sorry.
revisions.
Evening.
Evening.
I want Sean to feel like he's alone.
There you go.
So, state your name, please.
Yep, I'm Sean McCarthy.
I wasn't talking to you.
Yeah.
Stranger in the room, right?
Abbey Lane, and I'm here as a taxpayer, not as a member of the local board.
All right. And I'm Bill Keegan, town manager, in case you haven't noticed. So the item before you tonight is something we've been working on for quite some time. Selectman Capola has been working with us on this committee. It's sort of one of a working group that we formed. And this came out of discussions that occurred during last year and also during some of the AdCom meetings about concerns about the makeup of the actual CIP committee, the Capital Improvement Committee, and how it's been structured in such a way that was set up by bylaw by the town several years ago. I don't know the exact timing of it, but I will tell you that it's, what it basically says is that it's more or less made up of department heads and some representation from boards, Board of Selectmen, Finance Committee, School Committee. And the concern is that there was the optics of it, if you will, are that you had department heads more or less voting on their own items. And so there was concern that that was viewed as being almost self-serving in some ways. So this is a way to, so what we did was we formed a group because none of us wanted to have that kind of an optics situation. We went back and looked at the actual language of the bylaw itself, and we sat with the moderator, myself, Randy Collins, the finance director, Sean and Ginny, and we sat down and went through this along with Mary Beth as well, and came up with some new changes to the language. And generally speaking, we've changed it from just being a group of department heads and some board members to an appointed committee made up of appointments from the Board of Selectmen, the School Committee, the Board of Water Sewer Commissioners, and two members from the moderator. So it'll be a 5-person committee. Previously, the committee was chaired by the town manager. In this case, now that the town manager will serve, along with the finance director and school superintendent, will serve as staff or advisory to the board. We'll have no vote in the recommendations that come out of the committee. And those recommendations will then come before the advisory committee as well as the Board of Selectmen to make, actually, it comes back to the Board of Selectmen for your ultimate recommendation to the advisory committee. So those are the major changes that we've taken up. I'm certainly welcome to have my colleagues who are here on the serving the committee to speak to any other changes.
Yeah, and I'd like to add to that. So it was, the driver of part of this was the makeup, like Bill said, that wasn't the overwhelming factor. Part of it was the long-term look that the public couldn't see the town has a long-term plan, but the two members, the Board of Selectmen appointee and the advisory appointee to that board, they weren't part of the long-term planning. So as Bill said last June during the financial summit, we lack a long-range plan. This will allow us to form a committee that forms a long-range financial plan. So that's one of the big drivers. It's not just about optics and things like that. It's about efficiency and a clear review. And ultimately, this all reports back to you guys. You know, the Board of Selectmen get the best information possible. It also, should I go into some of the details, Bill, or were you going to go into that?
We can do that, feel free.
Yeah, what this does, it also has components that you'll be able to now, the committee will be able to look at stabilization funds as an alternative to a CIP request. So somebody comes through with $1 million capital improvement request, that committee will be able to look at that and say, we don't think that's something that should be a long-term plan. And instead of $1 million spend, you could put a $200,000 spend for 5 years into that stabilization and build towards something that you know is coming due, number one. Number two, if you did create specific stabilization funds, you would also be prioritizing where the CIP money went. You know, this board will be able to do that. They'll be able to prioritize long-term stabilization versus the short time, CIP request in that annual budget. So that's a big advantage that we don't currently have. We do have stabilization, we just don't have stabilization funds that are earmarked for a specific large special purpose, things like a school or.
So one other thing that's, a couple other things that were mentioned too was that concern over the fact that sometimes we had very large items for purchase that were not treated as separate articles. And that, so the committee looked at that and is now recommending that any item over $1 million will automatically be placed as a separate article for consideration by the town meeting. Items that range in the amounts of $500,000 to $999,000 will actually be recommended for consideration. We'll look at recommended for placement in the warrant as a separate article if the committee votes such a project as being something that's unique or something that's not automatically recurring on a regular basis. So it will give that extra consideration to it. As Sean points out, we'll have the ability to, the committee will have the ability to evaluate long-term and short-term financing options. It's typically what we do now, but actually, as Sean points out, he likes the idea of using stabilization funds, specific stabilization funds for long-term projects. And that process is used in other communities. It's not as specifically used here. We have a couple specific long-range stabilization funds for building projects and things of that nature, but not specifically for individual items.
And to highlight the importance of that, last year we had the discussion over dropping the tax rate and then how much money that was, and that came out to $529,000, $532,000. We put it away into capital stabilization. Even in this year's budget book, you'll notice where it says this can change, where these funds go by vote. We all discussed that should, for the best bang for the buck, should go to financing or should go to some long-term debt. So that's what the discussion was. That was the intent, or towards the borough school or something like that. That's something that if we had these stabilization accounts, that would have been in there already, as opposed to sitting where it can be used for something other than the intent of what it was pulled.
So this is certainly open for discussion because it's the first time you've actually read it in a public forum. I provided it to you a couple weeks ago so you can start looking at it. But so the issue before the board is if this is something that you find acceptable, then it would be up for consideration at the annual meeting. We did put a placeholder for it on the warrant. So this would be the language that we would put forward, and then would have to then go forward to the AdCom for their consideration if the board was so inclined.
Okay. Questions from the board?
Obviously, meeting times more concentrated, couple of months before the warrant articles.
So the reason that came up, the committee, we went back and forth on a lot of things, and the meeting times was one of them. The school, their budget process is a little later, so we were gonna try to get our capital things in order, so everybody gets a good look, there's a discussion, everybody gets to see it, and it's not so close to the vote. So we tried to tighten those lines, especially where you'll have the CIP, the new committee will have a long-range plan. They'll already have experience with what they're looking at and what's coming forward. So we should be able to get a better public view and more public input going into the town warrant vote.
I think you did an outstanding job.
Oh, thanks. It was a lot of research.
It looks like it.
I checked on some, and these guys, honestly, this was worked out really well. I can't thank Ginny enough. She heard I was going to go a little rogue. And Ginny, it was great. She pulled in the moderator and he corrected, some of the things. So we're working within an existing structure of our bylaw. We're not changing and throwing the whole thing out. We're just rewording and adding a few things. And ultimately, the stabilization funds that we're talking about, I wanted to create that as a separate entity. The moderator explained that we couldn't do that, and it's only a few small words in there. But ultimately, the board that takes us over, they'll decide how they're going to do that. The appointed board members, they'll decide how those stabilization funds will be handled. Recommended, yes.
There's no limit on how many separate stabilization funds we can have, so.
No, I mean, you need to be mindful of the fact, though, that it requires, 2/3 to come out. It only requires a majority vote to go in for when you create a stabilization in terms of vote at town meeting. So it does require a vote at town meeting every time you do that, you create those funds. The most recent update to the Municipal Reform Act actually changed it from 2/3 going in to just a majority going in, and then but 2/3 to come out.
Even if it's, an earmarked one?
Right.
Yeah.
So it does restrict you in some respects to be, so you have to be careful of that. But I think it's, what Sean's trying to, make the point on is that if we're serious about doing certain projects, we should be committed to those projects and make sure that we're putting funds aside to make sure we're getting it done.
Yeah.
So in the private sector, we call them replacement reserve accounts. We do 5-year and 10-year analysis, capital needs analysis, and then we set money aside for those long-term, big-ticket items. If you're financed too hard, it's a requirement as part of your escrows to put the money into replacement reserve accounts to make sure that the money is there when you think you're going to need the capital expense. So I think it's a good thing. I think it's good financial planning. Like to get that money out of free cash. It's a terrible term for it. And it actually sets the money aside and let the voters decide really when it's going to be spent and how.
And if it went into stabilization, 1 year you can fund it, the next year you can say we don't have it, and this is part of our plan. It can tie together with life expectancy of things, where you're paralleling over. I think there's really good news in it. If we had something catastrophic happen, 2/3 vote, you could vote and move that money out of something that was less important at that moment. And it would be hard to move, and that's the point, but it could be moved. It's reserve. And they used to have limits to stabilization, how much you could put into stabilization, and that's changed. That's no longer the case as of November?
About 2-3 years ago.
Yeah.
Your question? A couple questions, if you don't mind. And I talked off and on with Sean, and thank you for all your work on this. I think part of my frustration last year was the free cash, and when the town was taking in more than they anticipated. For instance, this year, last year, we had $1 million extra come in. Not talked a lot about, but goes into free cash. And
right.
Now we have a savings of $400,000. What happened to the 6? Those discussions. Not many towns have that luxury to do that. So this does give it a vehicle to have a plan where you can compartmentalize it, and it doesn't go into the free cash figured out by a select few. Okay, so there's people looking at this. So what you provided us is the CIP bylaw. So I don't know what's old and what's new, so I just have a couple questions on it.
Yep.
The schedule of events, so by February 1st, the CIP comes up with their projects. The department heads, there's a section in there that have to give it over in February, then it comes to the Board of Selectmen on the first Wednesday of March. Is that all from before, or is that new?
No,
We actually
that's
cleaned that
new.
up a little bit, so we tightened it up. We actually
April. It was April the process started, so this is as tight as it can go.
Okay.
Allowing for your meetings every 2 weeks.
Okay, so that was so this is not just a carryover?
No, this is something, this has changed, and the.
We actually did
This
do
is
our
a-
hearings in March, though. That's consistent. So I think what we did was to tighten up the window, so we made it so it was earlier in March, so there'd be more consideration for the different committees.
Yeah, and there was part of the process that had slid by for years where there was specifically, I think it was when things were submitted for CIP, what the deadline was and how far that got extended out. So this just sort of tightens that up.
So
And
basically.
It gives
the
you time at
department
the
heads
end, is
give-
what the key is.
There's 3 weeks that the department heads give it to the CIP goes through it, and then they send it over by this, which would be this week in March, that we would get that.
Well, keep in mind, department heads will be submitting by, it was December 1st. that
This is
they had-
February 1st now.
No, now it's February 1st, because
Has
it's,
to be in by
because of the schools.
Yep.
The schools are later, their cycles later.
All right, so then the third week in February, they have from the first to the third week to go through it, and then by this week in March, so we would be having it at this meeting, that the
Correct.
CIP would be presenting it. So the 3 pieces of criteria, the 5-year interval, it's gonna be more than 5 years, and the 25,000, that stayed the
It
same.
stays.
The $1 million is new, the
So
cap
that,
on it?
so that 2 parts of that are new. 1 million or over is its own article. 1 million is automatic. That's being changed.
There was no provision.
There was no provision
Yeah,
before. You
that-
could
that's
take a
what was
million and put
troubling
it
me
in with
before.
all one warrant article. Yeah, probably should explain that.
So
to the
if
public.
somebody wanted to pull $1 million CIP item out, they would have to hold the entire thing.
Correct, hold it, and people may not understand that process in the room.
Okay.
Because it's being pulled out, they weren't paying attention to it, and they're like, what am I voting on? So this way, it automatically gets pulled, put aside as its own article. Anything 500 to 999,000 gets, gets a look by the committee to see if it should be its own article. And they make that recommendation
Okay,
to
so
you.
it could be, but it doesn't have to be.
It does not have to be, yeah.
Okay.
And remember, this is going to be part of, so I started low a little bit, figuring, it started a lot lower on where I thought it would start at, but we're building something that's gonna last for years, hopefully, the
There are a
bylaw.
number of capital items that could actually come up on a fairly annual basis to replace vehicles, things like that, some large, expensive vehicles. So we thought the $1 million number was a good number, because whenever you're gonna spend $1 million, we should actually give a lot of consideration to the situation, separate consideration.
And then just 2 more quick questions. On the first section, there's a provision in there that says, nor shall, so the 3-year, you get appointed for 3 years, but it says, nor shall a member of the spouse, partner, or immediate family hold any full-time or part-time office or employment in the town of government. So if we're appointing someone from the selectmen to be on it, if someone's child or wife works for the department, we're excluded from that.
Well, none of the selectmen will be on it, but if somebody works for the town, yes, their immediate family would be excluded. I thought was really important was that we put the conflict of interest law in it, the bylaw, because conflict of interest law has to be taken to the state level. This just tells you right
Well,
away. at the
regardless,
appointment.
we're all under that anyway. So the conflict of interest
Yep.
and the ethics law.
Yep.
That's in there, whether it's written here or not.
Correct.
But I guess my question is, I think there'd be more of a conflict if I lived on a street where a utility was going through and I'd want to vote on it, or if I had a child in the school that plays for the band and someone wants to raise 30,000 for uniforms. Those are conflicts, and then that's where the ethics and the conflict of interest law kicks in. But you're handcuffing people because their child or their wife works for the town that may not have a conflict of interest, but for 3 years, they can't be on that.
Right.
It seems, and we kind of, a little bit had that discussion last year, we're all adults, we're under the state
Yep.
guidelines. Why would you penalize someone that doesn't have a conflict other than their husband, wife, or kid works for the town?
So.
Doesn't make sense to me.
So, we looked at it as, well, when I say we, I looked at it as, and we had a discussion about this, going back, a lot of discussion, and it was just a matter of, why would you if you didn't need to? So if you feel that that's not important, then we could go ahead and, again, you can make recommendations to changes to this bylaw, and we can change that.
Wait, no, I think that's what this discussion
Yeah,
is.
exactly.
So my question is, I think there's more of a conflict leaving it in here, because you're ignoring the bigger picture of what the conflict is. If it's an inherent conflict because of position, say if I had a business and something's going in front of it, and I vote for it, I can still be on the committee, but I can't if my wife worked for the rec department and has nothing to do with it.
Right, you're
So
saying.
it's
that-
almost like
No,
you're
I
putting
get
your
what you're saying.
blinders
I get
on.
what you're saying.
Yeah.
You're not gonna stop all conflicts. That's just not,
You're not, but
right.
But but people take personal responsibility under the ethics and the conflict of interest law without being told that you meet a category. For instance, we do have a committee member, you're on it, right, on the CIP from years. So we're changing that for now. But, so, and John Gray, a lot of integrity, his wife was worked for the school. He couldn't be on that. And it might be not even a CIP item. I would rather have somebody say, if I'm on the CIP and my wife or husband works for the school department, I would recuse myself from that vote, rather than saying, for 3 years, I can't be on it. It just gives the personal integrity.
So I'm not opposed to that.
Yeah.
I'm not opposed to that, based on the conflict of interest, if they would recuse themselves, sure.
They would have to anyways.
Right.
That's my
Yeah,
point.
Then, well, that's,
You know,
right.
So you're requiring someone not to be on it when they might not.
I guess,
have a
I guess it's repetitive in nature in the bylaw. I just thought it was important to reiterate it locally, but if you say no, because it's already in the conflict of interest law, then, that's not the major driver of this article, so that's something that I'm not married to.
Okay.
You're making sense when it comes to, what we'd be losing if we didn't allow people to serve, so.
Okay. And then one final question. So you go on the website, you look at the past meeting minutes from the CIP, it says who's on there. So I looked at the 2016 process, and again, it's on a Saturday morning and not televised. So there was one department that came in and said, basically, we want to buy 3 vehicles. Please vote on it. We don't know if it's going to be over 25,000 or not, but just in case if it is, and it's going to come out of our department budget. It just seemed odd to me. There may have been a loophole or something, but can you look into that to make sure that's addressed in this new bylaw? It just didn't make any sense. If you look at the meeting minutes
Yeah.
from that, it almost goes against what this is all about, because the CIP voted for something that wasn't included in it. It didn't come from the CIP budget. It came out of the operating budget, and it went forward. I think it could have been proper, but it doesn't make sense to me.
I think the issue there, Jim, is anything, it said, the previous bylaw, I believe, says anything over $25,000 in expense. And I think this case is a case where that was a case where they weren't sure if it was gonna go over 25,000 or not. So they had the committee vote on it anyways. Anything over 25,000 in value.
Says, however, in order to be compliant with the process, they would present a request purchase with the funding intent to come from a combination of accounts and
Well-
maintenance accounts. So it wasn't coming out of the CIP budget.
Well, here's where that may change. This says that it has to be presented early. This is presented, couldn't be decided at that meeting.
My point is, it was.
No,
So
my
all I'm
point,
saying
my
is if
point
you-
is this now has dates where you've got to submit your capital requests, and it has to be reviewed. So this has, when it gets to that point, I'm not so sure I'm
That
following.
takes care of your question, though.
Not really, because they could have presented this on a timely manner, still gotten up there and said, vote for this, it's coming out of our department budget, but it may be over $25,000. So it was approved unanimously, it came out of the department budget, didn't affect the CIP budget.
Yeah,
Okay.
but here's the point. If you'll take a look at section 20-32 of this bylaw, which I don't think we changed, actually. I think it's still actually in the same. It says vehicles and equipment which
No.
are purchased or undertaken in intervals of not less than 5 years, have a useful life of at least 5 years, and cost over $25,000. So even if the money came from their own department expense, their own budget, it still has to go through the CIP process, based on this language. So that's why it was done.
Okay, which is fine, but if it doesn't affect it, so then maybe the CIP budget should have come down to, so the town
Oh, I see-
allocates a
I
certain
see.
amount of time. It's a longer discussion, but
But
if you
it
could
still
look
has
at it,
to-
maybe it's probably proper, I'm
Yeah.
sure it is.
Yeah, no, it is because of like I said, it meets the
It's the
definition.
definition, right. So it's the funding, I think the confusing part, Jim, is that the funding source is not what's the issue, because the CIP budget is made up of several different sources, including budgetary funds. So the overall budget would have included that funding for those 3 vehicles. So their money could have, I think it probably was a fire vehicle, if not
Okay,
mistaken,
all
yeah.
right.
Because actually, there's money set aside in the ambulance reserve fund to pay for those vehicle replacements.
Yeah.
So that's where that money came from.
And again, if it doesn't come out of the CIP budget that was already put together, I don't know, as far as proposed, the dollar amount would change. They couldn't just vote it in.
And sometimes they'll come in like at $23,499 or something like that. So it could maybe just come under the 25,000, or it could just go over it. And so to be safe, they took the appropriate measure was to bring it before the committee and have them act on it.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions?
No, just a comment. We had a few meetings, and this was Sean's year. And I think it's important because CIP, most of the time, was just a one-day Saturday. You know, we worked from 8 in the morning till 2 or whatever. This provides a town committee, a recognized town committee, that they have to write a report up for the town report. But they'll be meeting more than just Saturday morning, and it's for long-term planning. And I think it's, Sean did a lot of work on it, as did Frank. Frank did a lot of work, and Randy. So it was a really good committee. There were very good comments back and forth, and, but I think we came up with a nice new capital improvement program.
Yeah.
So, thank you for.
Oh, you're welcome.
It's really, Sean was the one that started the whole ball rolling.
And I think, Jim, to address what you're, you know, what you were talking about, the conflict of interest, proposed changes, if you have something that you'd rather see, that would be great, or do you want to see that deleted altogether?
Personally, you can leave that, you reference the MGL requirements for conflict of interest and ethics.
Leave
you can
that
do
and take out the rest.
But just a blanket statement that says, if you're related to someone in the town, you can't be on this committee. I just don't see, I'd rather have it on a case-by-case basis. And if it gets to the point where someone says, geez, you're gonna vote on this as a conflict, at least as a dialogue that you can say, I don't have a conflict, or you're right, I'll remove myself. Because I think there's more of a conflict not having that dialogue than just saying, being repetitive.
We're just trying to avoid conflict. That's the whole thing, right? In the end, this is just trying to make sure that this is streamlined and you know,
So we
and
can
fair.
remove this line completely?
Except for the Mass General Law. I think we
Right,
should still
yeah.
leave that in there,
Well,
reference that.
It's as a town committee, you're automatically covered by 268A.
Right, yeah.
So there's no real need to even reference it.
Yeah.
in that regard.
I'd rather leave it if it doesn't offend anybody, but that's just me.
It's automatically covered.
No,
by
I
law.
understand that.
By
For the
law.
268A?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say that's fine to leave it. As long as you're not verbatim, because it's gonna, if it changes, if you just reference the law, it's fine.
Well, if you take out the sentence before that last sentence.
Yeah, nor shall a
doesn't-
member, spouse,
Or shall,
partner, or
yeah.
immediate family hold any full-time or part-time office or employment in the town of government. If you strike that second to last sentence, that would do it.
So
Yeah,
you
but
have to
then it-
really just say, all actions shall, or the committee shall be governed by the Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 268, Conflict
Yeah.
of Interest Law. I mean, that's the only reference to it then, if that's the case.
Yeah, the whole reason for it was just a definition so that when people were appointed to it, just, you know, we're not trying to exclude anybody, that they would understand it would be spelled out in front of them as opposed to just looking at the what is it, semi-annual, that you have to attend your training.
Any questions?
Sorry, it's a little late to the show, but is there a provision in there for when you need to do an emergency CIP purchase? Because, example, a bus gets stolen, it'd be well over any limits. Technically, in the past, they would convene the CIP committee to review the request. Roger loses a dump truck for some reason during the year. It's not gonna follow a nice, neat timeline, and that's happened over the years. It's, you know, it's unfortunate, there's nothing you can do to control it, so hopefully you have some kind of provision of business that allows for that committee to do something in those cases.
I thought that was.
We already have a capital stabilization account.
No, but Bill's right, I think. We don't specifically reference
Right,
a
we talked about
provision
that, though.
that if, in the event, I mean, this really deals with the annual meeting process. So, but Bill's right that there are situations where things happen throughout the year where we do have to replace a vehicle, and
Yes,
it does meet the requirement.
So this covers the planned expenses, it doesn't cover the unplanned expenses.
We could add a sentence, and I'll speak with the moderator about that, adding a sentence in it.
Can't you
that
just
says
say
that
the CIP committee will meet
as needed.
as needed? Because I thought we had put that
We'll
in
meet,
there.
they shall at least meet annually, You can say that, and they shall, but they
Provide a
also can
report.
meet as needed
Is needed.
in the event of an emergency.
How is the bylaw written now in case of
It's
emergency?
kind of open-ended. It doesn't-
Here it is,
It's open-ended in that regard.
that I don't remember seeing in here.
But it has happened, we've done it
Yeah,
on
it has,
several
but I don't
occasions.
think that was ever spelled out in the original
No, I
bylaw.
don't think it was. But it'd be good to put a provision in there, I think it's a good suggestion, actually. We can put language in there.
Yeah, I don't see the language in here, because we didn't change anything in regards to that.
We'll make a note and.
So there's a couple notes that have been made from tonight's discussion. I'll actually talk to the moderator about adapting language to the emergency provision. And then, any other thoughts? Anybody have any further thoughts? We can, so this will be a draft for tonight. I'll bring it back to you for final action at the next meeting. Does that make-
Thank you.
Yeah, to Jim's point earlier, do we have a red line version? Just to track
I can send
changes?
you the original version is actually on the website. I'll send you one. You couldn't
I
find it?
looked for an hour today.
It's actually it's a subsection of the financial area, so it's a subsection, so you probably.
I
wouldn't
checked
stick-
out the
It wouldn't stick out
selectmen
like, doesn't stick out like
clerks,
this.
yeah, it doesn't stick out.
No, but I actually have read it, so we'll send it to you.
Okay. Just one question, from your experience as town managers and others, and Sean, to have a group bring something forward that's $999,000 without going to town meeting. You see that, I see other towns struggling. It's a big number to me.
Mhm.
So at what point do you say it's important enough to bring to town meeting, or it's not important enough? Where did that $1 million come through? Because I know there was an item last year that was $1 million, there's an item this year, and a lot of people are looking at it and then saying, boy, this is a lot of money. At what point did we change from small town to big town that we can vote on $1 million thing on a population this big? Where did that $1 million come from?
Oh, it's,
We debated it quite a bit.
it came from a lot of sources, local receipts, taxation.
No, what is
No,
the
the
definition?
concept of.
Oh, you mean the
that-
concept?
That
Concept
this
of $1
small
million.
committee can vote on $1
We
million
discussed
for
that-
the town.
We discussed that quite a bit, because, believe it or not, there's a lot of things you can vote on nowadays that are $1 million, and there's a lot of things that aren't cheap anymore. So, I guess what we thought was, at least from the perspective of the committee, was that $1 million was a good number to use for a capital item, significant capital item. Quite honestly, that's why we put the 500 to $1 million in, or because at that point, it's a judgment call of the committee. It wouldn't be any of us deciding that, and frankly, I wouldn't want to decide that, because I think the townspeople should decide that. And ultimately, that puts it before the committee, before the town meeting at that point.
So the million's automatic.
Million's
and then
automatic.
You guys have the
Then
discretion
the committee's the
between.
judgment call
Yeah.
at that point.
Yeah, I started at 250,000, which, was really low. I mean, it was, just a really low number. We would have had a warrant article, for
Yeah.
everything. I mean, it was ridiculous, right? But I knew that I was, that I had to start low. But when we ended up at $1 million, that was a very comfortable level for the growth of the town. And I think when we're looking at the type of expenses, again, this is a new committee that is going to take a little harder look from the public side, because the town does have a plan. The town has plans for capital improvement. There's no doubt, they have great plans. It'll just give us the better oversight. So, you may not, some things, Jim, may not make it, on that warrant with more oversight. Who knows?
Yeah, okay. But if it gets.
In the overall
if
number.
A $900,000 building gets on there, not as a warrant article, but at this committee, it's vetted, it's discussed.
It's discussed, and they make recommendations to you. This committee answers to you guys.
At some point, I think the board could actually say, in light of the recommendation, still, we recommend it goes on as a warrant article.
Right.
You have that option, you still have that option, as a board.
And it's always still a line item under the budget, correct?
Well, no, if it's, well, it still comes under as a cost item that we have to fund. We have to define the mechanism for funding it, but it would be treated as part of the overall capital.
Still CIP as a header,
Even if
You'd
it's a
have to
separate
pull
article,
it
it's still.
and then pull it the line.
Gotcha.
from it. at town meeting. A lot of people just don't know how to do that, and it's uncomfortable.
Yeah, I think if it was anything that drew a lot of attention and it was over that 500,000,
Controversial
I
type
do
of
think that they would automatically make the recommendation if it was anything that someone thought was, you know, a pet project or something.
Thank you.
So we'll make recommendations and bring it back to you for the next meeting. Okay?
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Bill, appreciate it.
One a little behind, Sponsored Reservoir River Commission. Mr. Lewis? At all?
At all, yeah.
all.
Good committee.
At the NRC committee.
As you guys remember, 2 weeks ago, we got a really nice letter from Schneider Electric stating that everything was honky-dory down at the reservoir, and I thought it might not be a bad idea to have the actual committee come in, maybe a quick history, your thoughts on the letter, and anything else we should know. And I think the chairman officially.
No, Sheila is the
I
chairman.
thought Sheila was, okay. But I'll let everybody introduce themselves, and then there you go.
Yeah, all four of us are on the board of directors for it, and then also other people are on the committee, like Mark, and Conservation.
Conservation.
Health Department, yeah. Rich Glemmy's on it. My name's Rick Lewis.
Mary Peterson from Edwards Road.
Cindy Tracy from Ridge Road.
Kim Mellon from Monroe Street.
Yep. And just a little background on this. This whole issue goes back 40 years. 40 years in the making, I guess. And all started off with the Foxborough company getting a permit to discharge hazardous waste materials or their waste materials to the headwaters of the Neponset River. And they took that to be the reservoir. So they discharged into that heavy metals, chlorinated solvents, and phosphates and so forth. This committee was formed when it was decided that there was two major contaminants of concern. One was the nutrients, which is the phosphorus, which was put into the reservoir in orders of hundreds of thousands of tons, which caused a lot of algal blooms, and weed control was an issue. So this committee was formed to manage some funds that were set aside by the Foxborough company or Invensis or whoever the name of the company was at the time to help take care of weed control and nutrient issues. The heavy metals problem, predominantly it gets talked about as cadmium issues, was kept under the Massachusetts Contingency Plan program, and the company hired Woodward and Curran, who has licensed site professionals to oversee the investigation of where the heavy metals were and all that. Trying to do this relatively quickly, but then, so a study program went on for 30 years. And 5 years ago, that culminated in a recommendation that 100 acres of the reservoir needed to be dredged if they were going to clean up all the heavy metals. And they said this was a ridiculous amount of money to do it. It was $110 million. They had lots of contingencies in it, and they said, well, we really should study it for 5 more years because we really don't think this is the right thing to do. So we've been in a program of them going out and doing studies, and they said, oh, the metals are going to biodegrade. Well, metals do not biodegrade. What they did document is that the metals that were deposited in the sediments in the bottom of the reservoir are still there. They haven't been moving. They're still there. They're still at the same levels, for the most part, that they were 20 plus years ago, 40 years ago, whenever you wanted to go back and look at that. So that really has not changed. What has changed, which has been beneficial, is that the metal content in the water in the reservoir has cleaned up a lot. So there were very high exceedances in the metal content in the water annually. Every single time we have like a storm event, like a northeaster,
you'd see the numbers spike way, way up, way above what they call the acute toxicity, where if you have fish kills, you have, things won't grow and all kinds of stuff like that. But over the course of the last 5 years, the water chemistry has improved. We've been taking samples at the dam, and those samples got to the point that everything looked so good, we stopped taking the samples because we had 1.5 years worth of data that said there were no exceedances. Their study has shown the same thing. So what they're taking that piece of data and saying, oh, we're done. Hey, we're good to go. We don't need to do a dredging program. The metals are there, but we don't really have to do anything about them because the water's clean. I kind of compare it to, Chris, I'll come onto your property and I'll bury a few drums of heavy metals and just say, hey, this will never hurt you. You're okay with my leaving it there, right?
Sure, Rick.
We're old buddies. And so that's basically the situation. And from the, so what they've done now is they've submitted a draft risk assessment and analysis to justify not doing anything further. And I mean not doing anything ever again. No samples being taken, no checkbacks, no nothing. So it's gone from a $110 million cost item on their budget to zero. But their documentation is that all the metals are still there. What has happened, I think what's happened, why the water has improved, is the weed levels have reestablished themselves. There was a time period where the metals and so forth were so bad that there were no weeds, that it was kind of, nothing would grow. Now weeds have come back in. We do weed treatment programs to try to keep the invasive weeds out of the reservoir and keep it more natural. And we spend $60,000, $100,000 a year doing that type of program to have it checked on and treated.
Now, when you say we, do they pay for it at all, or how are you guys paying for that?
They funded our group with $2.5 million.
Okay.
And then it's been up to us to manage that money and to use that money to do the weed treatments. And we're looking at weed treatments going forever. Just like the metals in the soils, the phosphorus and nutrients are in the soils also. And just like your lawn, if you give it lots of phosphorus and stuff grows.
Yeah.
So we've got a very healthy weed population out there.
Can I just clarify too that the money that Rick is talking about is only for the nutrients, for the phosphorus? That has nothing to do at all with the metals. So we have two separate stories going on at the same time.
Okay.
Right. So we've kind of adapted being the watchdogs of the whole thing, but our charter really is more to deal with the nutrient issues and the usability of the reservoir. We have retained a consulting company that has their own licensed site professional to be queued up to review what they come back with, to make sure that what they're doing is in accordance to current state of law or not law, regulations. It's not really law. So we'll be going through that. We did request a copy of the draft from Woodward and Curran, and I got a nice email back saying we will get a final copy, but we don't get to see the draft. So we don't get to see what happened between their submittal and what the state commented on. So we only see after that. There will be a public comment period once that comes out. And they've told us that there'll be some sort of town hearing. We'll hold something like they did it years gone by back at the Ahern or something, where they will look for public comment. So that's kind of, that was trying to do it all in 5 minutes or less here, but 40 years of history. Open it up. You guys have anything else?
Well, just that any of the other reports that they've published, they've had public comment periods. We've submitted corrections and public comments, and they have gone ignored. Nothing, they have not changed the reports. They say that you'll have your time, you'll have your opportunity to comment, but nothing has changed.
Yes, that's true.
Anytime we've
which-
commented, whether the board has commented and we have commented, nothing has changed.
I worked as a consultant for 40 years of my life as a hydrogeologist, and worked with lots of public comment programs and lots of state agencies and federal agencies, and I've never, ever seen that type of thing occur like it has on this project, where public comments were submitted, town comments were submitted, conservation comments were submitted, and the state said, oh, that's fine, we'll deal with that later. Well, as soon as those documents are finalized and approved, you cannot go back to those and make any changes. Now, if we say, there's a problem with the sediments, well, that's history.
Phase two.
That's phase two, that's over with. We can't talk about that. So, that is kind of a disgusting issue that has occurred on this project, and we have not been able to deal with that. One thing that we have, our consultant has recommended, because we've had some discussions with them, there are some funding available for some limited dredging programs by the state in certain circumstances. And then we've also have some funding too that could go towards that. And quite some time ago, there was a Blue Ribbon Committee that was formed, and they said one way to improve weed control and nutrient control would be to do some controlled dredging to create channels in the bottom of the reservoir to deepen certain areas, so that you would get it so that it'd be deeper than the sun could penetrate, so you wouldn't have as much weed areas, and that way you'd get better drainage and better management of the reservoir itself. And we've been, we haven't gotten to the point of actually soliciting any kind of cost estimates for that type of work, but we're contemplating that could be done at some point. And the consultants have suggested that we put that possibility on record and submit a letter to the state while they're doing this review process, that the risk analysis that they're doing right now has to take into account all probable future use, future developments that could go on here. The reservoir one time, back in the 1950s, went dry. They probably will not consider a dry reservoir as one of those scenarios, because it's only happened once in over 100 years. But I think that we should probably put them on notice that, there could be, it's been recommended, it's been considered a viable thing to do would be to cut in some limited drainage channels, yeah, thanks, into the bottom of the reservoir. So that's one thing that we're going to be discussing in our next meeting this Thursday, and drafting something up.
Rick, if you did the dredging and created the channels, wouldn't that disturb the metals in the sediment?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. And
yes. And when the cost of doing the dredging is actually relatively nominal. It would not cost a heck of a lot to dredge channels in certain areas and so forth. What you do with those sediments, because they have the heavy metals in them, is cost prohibitive. That would require a lot of treatment and a lot of management. You can do dredging. What they do is they put curtains around it, or they can do sheet piles around it to limit it so that you don't disturb the sediments and spread stuff around more or send stuff downriver. So that part of it can be managed. But what do you do with those sediments? Who pays for the disposal? That is why we think that they need to be put on notice that if we did something like that, we'd be looking to them to be responsible for taking care of the hazardous waste disposal cost.
But right now, you said the metal in the sediment stays in place because the weeds are on top of it? Is that what you?
Yes.
Okay. So, but then you also have a program of destroying those weeds?
We treat for invasive species of weeds. There's certain weeds that get into certain areas, and when we first started this program, 80% of the reservoir had non-native plants that were considered invasive species that were choking out certain areas of the reservoir. Now there's everything's still weed. There are plants. There are plants everywhere. We do not have the invasive weeds. So it's, which in your yard, which plant is a weed, which one's a plant that you want. So it's like managing your yard. You might want to get the dandelions out, but you want the grass to thrive. So that's what we've been treating for, is to get rid of the invasive species and trying to get the native species to do well.
The bottom of the reservoir is kind of like just a big bowl of Miracle-Gro. It's all phosphates. So anything will grow, and the invasive species just kind of take over like wildfire. And we have a program where there's water chestnuts, which can fill a lake in a matter of 5 years. And we pull them, and hopefully in a timely fashion. But they're just nonstop. So we have to be on top of that every year.
Right. And we have 2 surveys done every year by experts that go out in boats and do hundreds of spot checks as to what kind of plants are out there and where they are and what diversity of plants they see, and then if in the spring they recommend what they think they should be doing for the summer, and in the fall they look at what did the treatment that they did in the summer, how effective was it, and are there new areas of different weeds showing up that weren't there before.
And the weed treatment program is done in conjunction with the Conservation Commission. We work with them hand in hand, and they've been great to work with. And we've been doing that for years with them.
Has the fish population come back?
Yes, it has.
Have any of the fish been tested?
Yes, they have, and they have metals. They do, and that was brought up. And then the comment by the state was, well, all the fish in the whole state have mercury anyhow because of mercury pollution that occurred over a wide area discharges, and therefore nobody should be eating the fish anyhow. So where we thought that there should be something special in way of something posted about this reservoir, they said, it's like, everybody's got mercury already. Yeah, you've got cadmium too. So, but.
And just one little comment, as Rick said, the state had issued permits for these metals and the phosphates to be, to go to the headwaters, which ended up first stopping in the reservoir. The state, it's in their best interest, I think, to resolve this, and they're very much working with whoever owns the reservoir to move this forward and sort of be done with it. So, as we've become the watchdogs of that, but they are working in tandem to get this off their plate. They're both technically liable.
So Woodward and Curd is still the record LSP on this. They've done all the phase 1, 2, and now they have it was unclear, they have a draft risk assessment plan that they're not letting you review?
It's a draft, because it's a draft, that's why it's not
Solution
open
statement, a permanent solution
permanent
statement.
solution. Yeah, what they're calling it is, it's a working draft of the permanent solution statement.
So that's available, but just not to the public? It's going straight to the
To the
DEP,
state,
to the
to
state?
DEP, yes.
So when they were in front of us last week, and their presentation was, it's going to be presented, you're more than welcome to see it, that's the final?
The final, correct.
Okay.
But if they submitted it to the state, it's a public record right now in the draft
Not as a
form.
draft, I guess.
Bill?
I don't know the answer to that. It's dealing with the state versus the town. I don't know if they have a different set of rules.
Can we look into that? I mean, if it's,
We can approach the state, but like I said, I sent Woodard and Kern had been very cooperative with us for the last 5 years. Every single time they had a notice that they had another report came out, they'd send me a PDF of it in the next couple of days. But this one, they just said, nope.
well, I could see the lawyers not, but I mean, if they submit it to a state agency, it should be a public
Well, you
record.
can make a public records request.
Yeah.
That's the only way to deal with that.
Yeah, it's just strange. I mean, if they're doing an ENF or an EIR, it's a draft EIR, it's a public,
Yeah.
they sent you, you're pushed to get comments because they want to hear your feedback. I'm not sure why the risks assessment would be any different from that.
So who would make the public record request? Your committee?
Yeah.
The town?
They know exactly what they're looking for.
Yeah, we can send in a letter for that.
Yeah, I would.
Okay.
I mean, in the past, this board has drafted letters of support for this committee and the work that you're doing, and the importance of it, and looking at the hot spots and the testing, and we've been doing it for years, so I don't think this would be any different.
But just that they know specifically what they're gonna be asking for, so the request is actually a pretty standard request. It's just, you know exactly what kind of report.
Right, and what we were thinking of doing is drafting a letter saying, in your review of this, package, be aware that we may consider doing dredging in the future, that there could be other uses, that there are fishing derbies going on, and there's more use. I mean, the town is getting more use out of the reservoir than that was in the past.
Sure.
It's, there are a lot of people out there fishing all the time now.
We just put a park right on it,
Yeah.
so.
Rick, why did the reservoir dry up in the 50s? Do they know why?
I wasn't here then.
Well, I mean, was it drought?
It was a
just
drought.
Severe drought?
It was a
conditions?
drought. Sheila's got pictures, Sheila Warner has pictures of people walking across the mud flats and stuff back in the 50s, but.
It got pretty dry just a few years ago. Actually,
Yeah,
pretty
we
close.
did, I mean, that was a pretty bad drought also, and the water level
Was very low.
dropped substantially.
Yeah.
We
But,
also had a leaky
yeah.
dam that's been, rebuilt and shored up. And part of that was to be sure that this is almost a never event, that we can, really tighten that up so that we can keep the water cover. Because cadmium that blowing around, cadmium's a carcinogen, and a lot of the people who worked with it developed lung cancer and prostate cancer. So we don't want this blowing around. You can't put a fence around that. So keeping it covered with water is a safety issue. We don't expect it ever to be dry.
Actually-
After the past few days, it won't be dry for a while. I can tell
Well,
you that.
I don't
Couple
know
years
how many
ago,
of you
Crack Pond
remember,
Rock-
but the company that used to manage the dam wanted to pull all of the boards in the dam and let the whole thing go dry at one
Yeah.
point because they didn't want the liability of managing the dam anymore. And that now, conservation now manages or has control over the dam, and the town owns the dam. So that was, it could have come down to having a big mud pit out there.
But then at that point, couldn't you just go in and dredge it? I mean,
Yeah.
get rid of it?
Yes.
And then dam it up again and.
But you can't get rid of the
But you can't get rid of
cadmium,
the.
it's toxic
it's still
waste.
Yeah, the
So-
cost is in the disposal, and,
Yeah.
when you have to send it to,
New Jersey.
basically.
Buffalo, New Jersey,
licensed site. I mean,
Oklahoma.
The cost of transportation is
Yeah.
ridiculous.
If they can find a chemical or molecule that could bind with cadmium, make it inert, if that product comes along, then, there's so much we would be able to do. But right now, our hands are tied.
I think on the phase 2, there was 3 or 4 pilot programs that they suggested, and they priced out. I think one of them was doing it when it's frozen, and they had a bunch of different stuff, but they were all pilot programs. The dredging that you're talking about, is that a proven approach, or is that another pilot?
No, it's a proven approach.
Approach.
Yes. I mean, they did PCB dredging on the Hudson River for General Electric. There are dredging companies that work nonstop all over the place that are constantly doing that type of work for utilities, and they're dredging up next to the Wynn Casino right now. My son's working on a dredge up there.
I was gonna say, doesn't your son do that now?
Yes, he does. So, and they put in the silt curtains around it so that it doesn't end up out in the harbor, and, you know, they do manage it.
Is there, the reservoir is spring-fed, right?
Yeah, but it's also 110 acres, so it's a lot of rainfall. I mean, it's a lot of surface area and surface runoff too. But there are springs. There are springs that feed
And
it
are
as
they
well.
identified where the springs coming up are?
No.
No, they, oh, okay.
Well, thank you for that, that update.
And if you need anything from us,
Yeah.
let Bill know.
I'm happy to help in any way I can. I mean, if you, even if you send something to them and just CC us, make sure you do that.
Will do.
Or if there's anything we can do to sort of, you know, I can, you know, help with a state agency or something like that, I'm happy to do that.
Will do.
Just remember, once it's closed, it becomes our problem, our responsibility going forward.
Yeah, that I think is something we should try to get some sort of legal advice on, because, you know, what happens with it, or how does, there can be special events or something unusual that could reopen it, but you're right, for the most part, it's, we'd have to just look at it and say, okay, what's in the bottom of that reservoir is what's in the bottom of the reservoir, and it's like I said, if I put drums in one of your backyards and just said, hey, do you mind living with this? You know, that's what they're asking us to do, is basically they've got, you know, thousands, hundreds of thousands of tons of heavy metals that they dumped in there, that's saying, it's okay for it, it's not gonna go anywhere.
How's the money holding up that they gave, the $2.5 million?
We've invested that, and it's holding up very well.
Okay.
Yeah, so we've got it such that our expenses, our income matches our expenses, or our income actually exceeds our expenses some years.
Okay.
When you contact, when you prepare to send your request to the state for the, what was it, the freedom of document?
It would just
Freedom of
be a
information.
public records request
Public records
to the
request.
agency itself.
You could contact the Senator Feeney and Representative Barrows and have
Right.
them
You could CC
attach,
them in the
attach their
letter as
letters
well.
and put their, you know, add their juice to the
That would be good.
request.
That's a good
Because that's
suggestion.
that's their job. That's
Yeah.
what they're
Right.
supposed to be doing.
They'll help you with that. And, you know, we can help too, so either way.
Okay, good. Appreciate it.
Thanks for being our
Thank you.
watchdogs.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You know, Schneider Electric brands themselves as one of the #1 clean energy renewable companies, according to the Boston Business Journal. Actually, it's #1 in the Boston Business Journal for the clean energy section. What a terrific opportunity right now to show themselves and demonstrate being a good corporate citizen. I mean, it's an opportunity. It really is. So I just wanted to say that and get you all thinking.
Okay.
Thank you to Mark. We appreciate you
Yeah,
coming
thank
to
you.
all of our
Thanks.
meetings and, yeah.
Welcome. Welcome. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, good job getting the Paul Harvey rest of the story.
Exactly.
We'll circle back and take up the 705 Carl Fuller Permanent Municipal and School Building Committee. Come on up.
We'll only appoint him if he fixed our parking lot lights.
We're working this whole time?
Thank you for holding this. I apologize. Apparently, I can't be at two places at the same time, so. As you know, we put forward a recommendation for Carl Fuller to fill the vacancy of Merrill Cass. Merrill has been on the committee for almost 32 years. Major, his background was in pipe fitting and heating systems that way, so he was a great resource to us. But he has put in his time, and I appreciate everything he's done. And when he asked to basically be able to, resign off the committee, obviously it was with, kind of hard feelings to see him leave, too. Obviously, his son's still on the committee and is the vice chair as well. But, what we have been able to do through the Board of Selectmen is to have a committee that is made up of people that are in the trades, which to me I think is extremely important. I say this pretty much every time I get in front of somebody when we're dealing with our new projects and our new construction is that one of the biggest problems the MSBA has pushed out when it came to school projects was that a lot of committees are built in towns for one project at a time, and it's people who have all the right intentions but really don't really understand what's going to happen in the process, and sometimes it can go bad because of that. I think this committee has been built very well, where we have engineers, electricians, architects, other people in the trades, and it really helps when we're in front of the general contractors and the subcontractors to be able to deal with issues. When Merrill did put us in, Carl had given us a point of wanting to be on to the committee at some point, and again, for us to be able to start bringing on some younger members into the committee is very important, because obviously we're not all going to be, all at some point be in Merrill's position too, and what we want people coming up behind us to kind of take over as well and have the same knowledge, that we've been able to build over time. Carl, for us, is a great resource. He's a general contractor by trade. That's his background. He's been in both light commercial and residential. And again, when you get into these projects, it's the typical things that happen in any construction project that are going to come up. And you really want to have people who are looking for those. So he would be a great resource to us. So I guess I ask you to basically consider his appointment, because I think it is a positive resource for the town, and again, keeps the committee in its track of building with people that have a reputation. I don't want all architects, I don't want all engineers, and I wouldn't want, myself as a business person all on the same committee. I would want a mix of them, and I think that's what we're fortunate to have right now, and to keep that, promoting as we go forward is really what makes this committee successful over time.
Questions?
Just one quick question. It says his term goes from 3/6/18 to 5/1/18. It's going to be a short.
Well, he just really wanted to get a taste of it. No, actually, he has to fill Merrill's term,
okay.
and then hopefully you just do an automatic reappointment from him at that point in time. But yeah, he would be filling the term that Merrill would be vacating. So.
Shortest term in history.
Any questions?
I mean, Carl knows the town, and I had an opportunity to speak with him this weekend, and he's got a good reputation, and he's hands-on, and thanks for volunteering. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm a little partial to facilities guys anyway. I think it's great to have a facility guy on that board, because they're the ones that live in the buildings. They know how the buildings breathe. They can point out how important mechanical rooms actually are. They don't belong in a closet. So I think it's a great resource. I think you got to be well served. So.
Any questions?
No.
Did you want to say anything,
Motion
Carl?
to appoint.
No, I just say, like I said, I look forward to the opportunity, and I definitely appreciate the opportunity. I have been in the business, of building and remodeling my entire life, so it's definitely something I very much enjoy doing, and happy to be able to help out the town in that way too, because I'm a lifelong resident of the town as well. So thank you.
All right. Move to approve the appointment of Carl A. Fuller to permanent municipal and school building committee for a term starting 3/6/18 and expiring 5/1/18.
Second.
Motion made second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thanks, Carl.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good luck.
Look out.
See you in a
Thanks.
couple months.
Those lights back on too.
Okay, action items?
Skipping over
Skipping over the two
town
updates.
manager, selectmen updates.
Yeah.
All right.
Right to,
So,
Gonna be here late, and I'll get you everything.
yeah,
You've been sitting here.
Why are you here?
You here for the liquor license?
you know what? Yeah, we'll do,
I can't take looking at him any longer.
We were voting on these 2 weeks ago. You should have been here.
not used to you coming in advance. All right, let's do the,
There it is, I see
action
him.
items.
Move to approve a one-day wine and malt beverage license to the Orpheum Theater for 3/10/18 from 5 to 11:30 for the variety show and community talent contest.
Second.
Motion made, second. Any further discussion?
How are you making out getting all of your stuff in line for a full-blown license? Is that moving forward?
I also serve with Foxborough Cable Access, so I'm very sensitive to Mr. Stewart's sound needs. So we're actually, I believe we have overcome the final hurdle. We have taken the final step necessary to execute the changeover. So we're in a positive place. All these things that have happened have all gone towards the greater good, and I think that we're in a much stronger position now, actually, having gone through the last 5 months, and we're ready for the next step. We have a great representation, and we fully expect the next time to be in front of you for a different conversation, so we're very happy.
So, motion was made, it was second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
And I'll, for the record, recuse myself.
Move to approve a one-day wine and malt beverage license to the Orpheum Theater for the 3/24/18 from 5 PM to 11:30 PM for the comedy night Foxborough Follies with Michael Pettit.
Second.
Motion made, second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
For the record, recuse myself on that one also.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Sorry to make you wait.
My pleasure, it's a very enjoyable meeting.
Another satisfied customer.
Another politician. It wasn't enjoyable.
All right, Selectmen's update. Got some very sad news early this evening, and I'd like to pass along my condolences to Mike Johns and his family in the passing of his brother Chris. You know, Mike's probably one of my favorite people in Foxborough, so would like to pass along our condolences. I'd like to say congratulations to Chris Mitchell and Julie Sharkey for being honored at the State House last week for Homes for Our Troops completing their 250th home. So congratulations, Chris. Very well done.
Yeah, it was quite an event.
So, anybody have anything else? Coming up?
I just want to pass on thanks to everybody over the weekend storm, our police, fire, DPW, just everybody just did a phenomenal job. Bill, even Amanda working, doing the tweeting or whatever that Facebook stuff is.
Updates.
It was a really,
Social media.
really good effort.
And Lauren Batar and her group of the
Yeah.
Corps came out.
Yeah, the volunteer corps.
Volunteer Corps.
You know, just to piggyback off that, it was pretty, for me, being a part of that process on Saturday, it was pretty neat watching the whole thing come together. At first, I thought I was gonna be a nuisance to Bill tagging along, but it was neat from the beginning all the way to, you know, when the Taylor School opened up, seeing how it came together, how everybody worked together, was really a eye-opening experience, the behind the scenes on how upper management in the town takes care of the town. I thought it was great.
I got a call last night, probably right before dinner, from an elderly gentleman who was one of our shelter guests for the evening, and he just wanted to say it was the most enjoyable experience, couldn't have been any better. Wanted to pass his thanks on to everybody that had a part of it. And you know, to that point too, when you look at how long, like Centennial and Carlin and Court were without power, and the lack of generators, it's pretty, we gotta do something with that situation, because Sunday night, Centennial was still without power up until, I think they powered up 7:30 or so. And we went, myself and my wife, with, you know, the fire department kind of door to door we bought some boxes of Joe, and those poor people were literally almost frozen to death, and there's no way that should happen in this day and age, so I'm gonna try to do whatever I can to start moving something along there generator-wise, so more to follow on that.
Yeah, so we'll follow up on that too with the Housing Authority, because obviously that's their property, so we want to try and make sure that enough resources are dedicated into those situations. We were able to move, to get that area prioritized as much as we could with National Grid. Unfortunately, what they focused their attention on was getting as many people up as possible, and they did. Unfortunately, the one at Centennial was tied to the pole that broke in the middle of the street, and they had to get a pole-setting crew to get in there. And they actually pulled the crew from another area to get that done for us because of how much pressure we applied to try and get that done. And I'm grateful to the National Grid rep who really pushed hard to get that done for us, and to our fire department team that pushed as well. And collectively, we did a lot of extra calls to get that done. So they responded, which was great, and they got that done. It's always a challenge because, you know, everybody wants their power back on immediately, and it doesn't work that way. There's certain priorities and processes they need to go through in order to get to that point. But all in all, I have to tell you, it was almost just about 48 hours. We had 90% of the town back up, which was pretty amazing when you did an assessment of all the damage that was out there. It was pretty significant. So, if you want, I'll just roll into my report. I'm just going to piggyback everything that's been said so far. Is that I'm grateful to all the public works, all the public safety folks that really pulled together, all the volunteer corps. Lauren Batar and her crew were tremendous, and the Boy Scouts of Troop 32 and 37 and 7, who came almost within a moment's call and said, "We need you," and they showed up at the Taylor School. We got Bill Euchner, hold of Bill Euchner, and he said, "Yeah, the school's open." He pulled some folks to get over there immediately to help service, put some food together, and and a custodian crew just to make sure everybody was kept comfortable during the time that they were there. We had about 15 people, about 18 people I think showed up, and about 15 people stayed for the night. And it was helpful to get those folks into a warm environment and give them a warm meal. We know a lot of people don't like to actually leave their environments. It's just the way we are as humans. We like to stay exactly where we are. The challenge, though, is that we know that they started to get cold, and that's why we wanted to make sure that we had that option for everybody to be available. We also talked about, we did a breakdown of the operation yesterday afternoon, and it was, we had some really good ideas, that Chris pointed out about we need to do a better job of making sure that there are resources available through the Housing Authority. That's not town property per se, but it's certainly an agency that we can work with to try and help them with providing additional support for their situation over there. But we want to find a better way to reach the public, because the best way we found was through Twitter and through Facebook, because those are social media avenues that most people had their cell phones on, but didn't have much of anything else. Cable was down, so we didn't have that. Telephones weren't always working in every case. We had the newspaper, of course, was not really available to most people, and most people don't read the newspaper, you know, under those conditions. So we were pretty much limited to Facebook and Twitter were the two major avenues that we had, and we put out regular updates on that, and we're going to even do a better job now that we have some additional thoughts about how to attack that. I want to thank Amanda for coming together on a moment's notice to try and help us with that, because she was literally on the job for almost just about a week, and we threw her right into the mix of that. So I appreciate the work that she did on that. Now that we're at this stage where we're actually full 100% back up and running, again, grateful to the National Grid crews for working around the clock to get us back up. We're now facing the storm cleanup piece of it, and Public Works is now working to try and clean up the street. Anything that was pushed into the street or pushed to the side of the street, we're cleaning those things up. We're not cleaning people's private yards. We don't have the capacity to do that. But we do have the ability for residents to take stuff to the compost area, We're gonna be open this weekend from Friday to Saturday from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. And then next week, starting on Monday, March 12th, through the 17th, we'll be open from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. at the compost area. Now, it's important to point out that that's not for landscapers or private tree companies. That is only for residents to use if they want to dispose of some of the debris that they sustain in their own yards. So just be prepared for that. There's an area that's been set aside to do that, and actually DPW's been working to try and develop a little better paved road in there with some of their recycled materials to make it better for people to actually get into the area.
Are you going to require proof of residency?
They'll have to check they will check licenses to make sure that people are strictly residents only. So that is underway. That process is underway. We are keeping a close eye on the next storm, which is supposed to hit us tomorrow about noontime. It doesn't appear to be as significant as first thought. We are, however, assembling our emergency management team tomorrow morning at 8:30 to make sure that we are ready and see get the latest forecast and make sure that we're ready to deal with this next storm. This one is more of a snow event, and I think in particular our event, in our area, we're seeing sort of a mix, and we may even see more rain than snow. So the amounts appear to be going down in this area. It's from somewhere like 2 to 3 inches. Earlier today, it was somewhere in the 6 to 8 inch range, so that number has come down, so we're keeping a close eye on that. The greater concern is that it's a heavy wet snow, that if it does fall, it could actually cause further problems to the power grid. We're also concerned about some of the wind damage that could be sustained, but the latest reports indicate that we may not get as much wind as we thought. So we'll have a better handle on that tomorrow morning. The greatest concern that we have right now is that obviously the system as it is right now is in a compromised state, because the repairs they make are what they are, exactly, repairs. And so they're not full replacements of areas that need to be fully fixed. The other thing is that the trees that didn't go down the last storm are also going to be compromised. So we're worried a little bit about that, depending upon the weight of the snow and how much wind we get. So we're going to keep close eye on that to make sure we don't end up with the same situation we just came out of. So again, thanks to everybody for pulling together, doing a great job and supporting each other during a very difficult time. I just want to point out too that a couple things we put out was the information about the compost area, but also National Grid has an app for your phone that we encourage residents to use, because that app will give you the latest information on restoration and restoration times, the areas where power is out, and give you an estimate. They're required by DPU to actually give you an estimate of time of when it's going to be restored. That information is actually shown up on a map. You can actually zoom in on your actual neighborhood, and it'll show you exactly where you are and when that's going to be repaired. Oftentimes, those restoration periods are much longer than they appear to be. They often are. Often the repairs come in sooner than what they estimate. Last but not least, the Hathaway-Patterson site, which is familiar to most to the members of the board, is that area located down on County Street, which was created as a parking lot area. It was actually a Superfund site at one time. That the EPA is now determined to be no longer active as a Superfund site. It's going to still be under their supervision. It will still be monitored on a very regular basis, but they are going to make a formal announcement taking something off the list, which is a significant milestone for the EPA. They don't normally do that. So they've reached a really critical point in terms of the restoration of that particular site. So we were on the phone this past week with the EPA, along with the town of Mansfield, who's going to be working with us on this announcement. So I encourage board members, if they'd like to attend, there'll be a formal press announcement and announcement given by the EPA and state officials, along with the town, at 2 p.m. on March 15th, and right at the parking lot of the Hathaway-Patterson site. So again, a significant milestone, and congratulations to everyone who's got us back into that kind of condition. That does it for announcements. We do have the updated list of the actual warrant articles which we sent along to you, so you have that information. We'll be getting into this process probably by your next meeting. So if anybody has any questions about any particular articles, feel free to email me or call me. I'll be happy to go over any article that you wanna do.
Have you sent the latest list to the advisory committee? Because they
Yes, we
didn't
have.
have it.
We-
Oh,
we-
okay.
I
They
did
didn't
send
have
it to-
last week.
Yeah, I actually sent it, we sent the latest list as of this morning.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so they have this, they'll have it for tomorrow night's meeting. Okay. There is a meeting tomorrow night by the advisory committee. Right now, it's still in place. We don't know if it's gonna actually occur, given the weather situation, but at this point, it is on, as far as I know. All right, that's all I
So the
have.
list that's on board docs is the latest one, dated 3/2?
Yes.
Okay.
Action items?
Move to approve a renewal of a Class 2 used car dealer's license to Farmers Auto Brokers.
Second.
Motion made, second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all's in favor?
Move to approve Foxborough Youth Baseball and Softball Association's opening day parade on Saturday, April 14th, 2018, from 9:30 a.m. until 10:30 a.m.
Second.
Motion made, second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all's in favor?
Aye. Move to accept a gift donation in the amount of $25 to the Council on Aging in appreciation of services for Mr. and Mrs. James Oliver of Foxborough.
Second.
Motion made, second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all's in favor?
Aye. Move to accept a gift donation in the amount of $60 to the Council on Aging for payment of half of a Tai Chi classes from the Friends of Foxborough Seniors.
Second.
Motion made, second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye. Move to accept a gift donation in the amount of $700 to the Boyden Library to support the Museum Pass Fund, specifically the Museum of Science Pass, from the Friends of Boyden Library Foundation.
Second.
Motion made, second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all's in favor?
Aye.
Move to accept a gift donation in the amount of $200 to Veteran Services from Kurt and Laura Bolgen for the Iraq and Afghanistan War Memorial.
Second.
Motion made, second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all's in favor?
Aye. Move to accept a gift donation in the amount of $100 to the Veteran Services from Cynthia McGinty for the Iraq and Afghanistan War Memorial.
Second.
Motion made, second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all's in favor?
Move to accept a gift donation in the amount of $100 to Veteran Services from Janet Haynes for the Iraq and Afghanistan War Memorial.
Second.
Motion made, second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all's in favor?
Move to accept a gift donation in the amount of $25 to Veteran Services from Patricia Scanlon for the Iraq and Afghanistan War Memorial.
Second.
Motion made, second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all's in favor?
Move to accept a gift donation in the amount of $100 to the Council on Aging from Larry and Janice Patrick and the Brown Trust in memory of Roberta McIntyre.
Second.
Motion made, second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all's in favor?
Aye. Move to accept a gift donation in the amount of $100 to the Council on Aging from Gail Lacken in appreciation.
Second.
Motion made, second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all's in favor?
Aye. Move to accept a gift donation in the amount of $30 from Friends of Foxborough Seniors for programs for seniors.
Second.
Motion made, second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all's in favor?
Move to accept a gift donation in the amount of $850, I assume, to the Veteran Services from the Foxborough Boy Scouts of America Pancake Breakfast Fund for the Iraq and Afghanistan War Memorial.
Second.
Motion made, second. Any further discussion?
Yeah, 2 points under that. I want to thank the Boy Scouts for continuing the tradition of donating 10% of their profits back to the community. We started that 15 years ago when we took over for the JC's community service projects, and so I want to thank them for that. And just an update, seeing that this is the last one on our list, this puts us at about $8,000 still needing to be raised to finish the memorial. Granite is all ordered, tentative date to do the dedication, but I can't share it, so it's tentative. But we do have a plan in place for that. And as far as the names going on, at this point, I checked with Matt right before the meeting. They have 83 confirmed names that are going on, and they're still looking for more names. So everything's going good. We should be in good shape. That's it for discussion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So,
Move to go into executive session.
Second.
so we're not returning, right?
Now return to open session.
And we're not returning to open session.
I'll second that.
You want to restate the purposes for the record, please?
Yes. To conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations for contract renewal with non-union personnel, the Finance Director, Randy Scollins, and to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for contract negotiation amendment with non-union personnel, Police Chief William Baker.
Second.
Motion made, second. Any further discussion? Seeing none. All
A roll call vote?
Yeah. Can I get there?
All right, I'm sorry.
Give me a little credit here.
I'm sorry.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Ginny?
Yes.
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 Me, yes.
Thank you.
Bill? Yes.